Welcome, YouTubers and fellow tankers. I am Shrine King, and this is King's Court. And today we're going to do a review of the Pershing, which is a Tier 8 American medium tank on the on track currently going on right now. So one of the reasons why I'm kind of trying to get these videos out is for that. So for those that are new, for these reviews, it's kind of like a review and a guide. There was some recommendations that some of the viewers made asking for extra details for the tanks in particular, kind of like what modules to aim for, and then also what to do like in a harsher scenario, right? And know where the tanks or like particularly like what matchup on tanks that you need to watch out for when trying to go against them. So what I do on these is the typical model is I cover pros, cons, and then I get into the guide aspect to say like how to best play the tank. So here you'll see I'm actually covering the Pershing, and I'm showing just basically how the tank looks. So I mean, if getting outside of pros and cons, just the look of the tank is nice. It does definitely looks like a nice tank. Now, getting into the pros, one, the patent line is a weird line overall. It actually has the highest vision rating in the game. Now, currently, the only thing that can compete with it is the Sheridan, which is the American Light at Tier 10. They both have 420 view range. So you'll see I'm also showing the stats, so if anyone was kind of curious to the stats. So what you'll notice is the turret and the hull, it's kind of like light. It's not very heavy. And then the gun power is kind of okay. You'll see that the penetration of 160 at tier 8, that's kind of like, it's moderate. 240 is, that's moderate. The accuracy is okay. It's not that great. So, like, and you'll notice I'm kind of getting into a very repetitive model here. It just seems very, it's okay. Now, one thing that is kind of interesting is starting out, when you first unlock this tank, you actually already have, hopefully, right, depending on what you did in the previous tiers, you already have the engine unlocked. You have the radio unlocked. You already have, I think it's the tier 7 gun unlocked. Which that's the one that where you're sitting at 240 alpha with like 160 penetration, which is again is just it's not that bad. Now those are kind of like the pros to this. So it actually has okay camo, which is cool, and then its speed is kind of like it's not bad. It's actually heading up a little higher, and you'll see the highest tier gun on it that you can unlock. I mean, it becomes a little more accurate, and then you get only 10 millimeter extra penetration, which still puts it as like, yeah, that's a little better, but it's still not that great. When going against tier 9s and tier 10s, you're gonna probably have to use premium. So in here, I'm showing kind of like some information for the next tier, and you'll notice that the gun that you unlock there, you definitely want to unlock even though it was an option in the last one, because that one will already be available for the tier 9. And what you do not want to do is try going in tier 9 with only 160 penetration. Now you have to unlock the next gun to even get to the tier 10. And that's great because that one actually has higher penetration. And even then, that penetration performance is still kind of meh in comparisons to a lot of the tier 10s. One thing I will note is when you get to this patent, you most likely want to unlock the turret and then go straight for the gun and then go straight for the tier 10. Don't bother if you can. Don't bother getting the tracks or that extra engine. There really is no point. Overall performance to the tank, I almost guarantee is going to be kind of moderate. It's the interesting part is it will be a counter scout because of the vision, and that's what you really want to focus on. So when talking about the pros of this tank, I mean, I am not kidding. Vision is a big, big thing for this tank. Now, when you get to tier 10, then things kind of change because you actually start having armor on the tank, making it to where you can be a little bit of a brawler, kind of get in situations where you can kind of hold your ground. The tier 8 and tier 9 are not that way. You actually really need to be like kind of like a sniper support tank, and try to stay away from getting into situations where you're just going to get spotted and shot because any shot at you pretty much can pen you. Once you get to the tier 9, it kind of changes a little bit. So that goes into the cons of this tank. So one, it cannot take a hit at all. It is horrible for that. If I were to give a con, I would say another side of the cons to it is that I am not kidding. This thing is just kind of moderate overall. It is so in between, like a middle ground with everything else, like the gun and all that. Like, well, yeah, it has damage output potential. To me, it's just this thing has a niche, and you really need to fulfill and stick to that niche. And if you don't, you're pretty much screwed. So, one of the bigger cons to me is that when it comes into comparison to performance to try to damage higher tier tanks, it's going to be really rough. Like, this thing has to flank most likely. Real quick note, one thing I do recommend is that if you are playing this tank and if you have the Super Pershing, which is the one I'm showing right here, if you have the Super Pershing, I highly recommend that you run that premium as your crew trainer for the Pershing. The reason being is like angling, gun handling, stuff like that. They're very similar. Now, one thing to note, I say they're similar, but funny enough, the Super Pershing actually has better penetration than the Pershing line, even with its best gun on it. Or I'm sorry, the tier 8 specifically. So you'll see here, this is when I actually first got the tank, so I'm setting things up for it. And I wanted to show that so that you can see that this is literally like right out of the box as you're getting started. First things to do, right? Get the camo on there, put on the modules, because that was one of the things that was kind of nice, is coming right out of the box as stock. I have more than enough weight to be able to get everything on here. So I'm getting the next gun, I'm getting the radio, I have the engine, I'm able to put on all the modules. So that was really nice. Now, with that said though, that doesn't necessarily make it amazing by any means. So that's the thing to kind of bear in mind for this. So back to the premium side of it. Again, I do highly recommend the Super Pershing because, again, the angling and stuff like that, it definitely will help you. And kind of show you the things to bear in mind is with the Super Pershing, you can be a brawler. It definitely, or I shouldn't say be a brawler, but you can hold off enemies. They'll most likely not be able to penetrate you very often because while it has the 110 millimeters of armor, just like the Pershing, the difference is it has the spaced armor with extra angling, and what that does is it makes it to where even though it's 110, it really is sitting at like 200 for a lot of stuff, and people don't necessarily realize that. So when going against the Super Pershing, it is very difficult to penetrate it. And the other thing is the Super Pershing is a preferential, so you're not going to see tier 10s, you're at tier 9. In most cases, you'll only see 3 tier 9s, right? Some cases, you'll see 5 because it'll give you the matchup where it's 5 tier 9s and then 10 tier 8s. Even that stuff, like, honestly, it's not that bad. But what I can tell you is, like, tier 6s, tier 7s, they don't stand a chance against a Super Pershing. So when you run that, it's actually really good for training up your crew. Now, specifically for this line, a couple things to note for, like, crew training. You definitely want to get Sixth Sense. That's basically hands down any tank. You want Sixth Sense. You are going to want Concealment because the Concealment, like I said, you're probably going to end up having to play this tank a lot like a sniper. So it's definitely very good to have Concealment. And you're going to want to pick up Recon when you can. I would actually probably pick up Recon before I ever picked up Brothers in Arms. But that's entirely up to you. If you choose to get Brothers in Arms, absolutely, I understand. But based on the tank line, the Recon will help you early on, where Brothers in Arms becomes more essential once you get to the tier 10. And then, like I said, if you have the Super Pershing, it's a great one to work through with it. Recon won't benefit you as much in the tier 10, but it's still very nice. Now, the modules, to cover those, like you want the camo net, you're going to want the binocs, and then honestly the third part is whatever you kind of feel works best for you. I picked up, what did I put on it? I think I put the gun rammer. Chances are vents would have actually been cooler, to deal, because that way you get like camo bonus and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see this is my first matchup in it, and I mean literally this is out of the box first match, and you'll see like I'm going against particular takes. Like I'm not necessarily bottom tier, so I'm only one tier below. But you'll see like I'm matched up against tanks that are going to be a little bit tough for me. So like the Pantera, the KV4, well actually the KV4 I don't think is on this side, but like T-34, Pershing, these are all tanks that can fight well on the hills. The difference here is a lot of these tanks are, like I said, they're going to be able to damage me. So you technically want to kind of stay behind. Now here you'll see I'm using the vision to my benefit, and that's the key with this tank. So by the way, for the review of the tank, like I said, to me, I think it's really moderate. When you talk about this line, I think the line grind is okay, mainly because like the tier 6 and tier 7 is really, it's fun. But then you get to the tier 8 and it's kind of like meh. And you get to tier 9, it's gonna be meh. But then you get to the tier 10 and it's actually a really nice tank at tier 10. Now, it doesn't necessarily perform as good as some other tanks, but like I said, the key thing with this tank line is once you get to the tier 10, it's really a counter to those who want to hide. It has great eyes. It's definitely a tank that you can play very heavily for support. You definitely don't want to really be a frontliner. When you get to the tier 10, you can help a frontline push, but again, just bear in mind that if you're doing that, you want to make sure that it's one that you're going to win. If the push is probably not going to win, I would actually stay back because your eyes is definitely a real big thing. And if you don't have lights on your team, you need to be your scout for your team. Because I'm not kidding. The eyes on this is just, it's incredible the difference that the extra vision range makes. With that said, one thing I should point out, because of the vision rating on this tank, for example, even right now, with me being stock, I have 390 vision rating. When I get the next turret, you're at 400. With 400, if you have recon, you're getting another 10%, which means you're already at 440. You would not want coated optics. By putting coated optics on, coated optics says it will boost your view range up to 445 maximum, which means you essentially get 5 meters of view range. And that's if you don't already have Brothers in Arms. If you had Brothers in Arms, you're already over the 445. So there's no point in having coated optics whatsoever on this tank. You just run binocs, because binocs will go past. Now the difference there is, so anyone knows, if you're not, or maybe you didn't know, but the maximum view range in the game is 450 meters. That is actually the circle that shows up on your mini-map, where if, for example, I show a blue one right now, and then there's an orange one. The orange one is the maximum view range. That's 450. Now, the part that not everyone knows is that if your view range actually is supposed to be past 450, for every meter you put past 450, you start actually countering camouflage, which means you can spot scouts and tank destroyers and things like that that are hiding in bushes. All right, that's where it becomes essential. So here you'll see, like, rather than me trying to be the aggressive guy, get in there and be like, oh, I'm gonna shoot because yeah, my turret can hold up. This thing's turret can't. It will not. If anyone puts a shot into me, it's gonna pen. So instead, what I can do is I can use that, like, depression and the angling to try to get up there just to kind of spot real quick and then roll back, keeping it to where they can't really shoot me. So you'll see it, and like the way I'm doing this is I'm trying to keep it to where I'm just barely coming above to see them. Now I am going to try to shoot them, and you'll see, like right there, I still couldn't pen. So this is the same thing I'm talking about. The gun is kind of meh. Yeah, I don't pen, but at least I was able to crit him. That's nice. And then the gist here is, even though I wasn't like the best one on the field, I played support. So all I did is kind of everything I could to focus on just putting in some support fire where I could, stay kind of hidden, try to spot where I could. So like line up in ways that if they're trying to retreat or anything like that, I could spot them. So here you'll see, okay, I see this guy, and then I see, oh, he's turning his turret towards me. I'm getting the hell out of sight because I don't want to get shot by him. Now that said, like, hey, you know what? I got vision on him. Now here's this guy. Okay, bam, look, ricochet. Yeah, this is typical with the Udises and Stirs, this line. Now you'll see, like, there are options where I could penetrate them, but it's pretty limited. So that's really the gist of the tank. Now, getting into some of the other effects. So with the tier, or I'm sorry, some of the other notations. So with tier 8, you definitely want to unlock the turret. You definitely want to unlock that other gun. And you might need the tracks, but I don't think you do. You might actually be able to do it without getting the tracks. So you might be able to get all of that without the tracks and move on into tier 9. If that's the case, I would highly recommend doing that. But if not, there are two options. One, the first gun, it's not a bad gun. Like, you can, this gun that I'm using right now, where it's the 160 pen, for the tier, it's not horrible. Like I said, you run in this situation where you can't really fight against higher tiers, especially the heavies, unless you get like side shots into them and things like that. So it's really more like a sniper kind of thing. But if you get the turret will boost your view range, already enhancing one of the strongest points to the tank, making you a better like scout, which will help in performance because you'll get a lot more assistance than you would actual damage. Sadly though, if you are one of those people that are really big into the whole WN8 ratings, yeah, you're probably not gonna really like this tank, honestly, because that WN8 is gonna be hard to pull in with a mediocre gun with like mediocre penetration against tanks that are, especially nowadays, getting a lot harder to penetrate because they're getting more and more armor. And then they're also getting bigger and bigger guns to smack you with. So, yeah, that's just one thing to note. The other thing is, when we talk about comparisons to what tanks to kind of watch out for, so one, any high alpha damage tank, stay the hell away from it. Stay out of sight. So, like, you know, for example, IS-3s, you know, at the tier 8, like, they still have really good damage potential. Like, in one shot they can hit you for like 440, 450. Progettos, right, or Panteras and stuff like that, they're not necessarily high alpha per shot. It's the fact that they can put multiple shots into you and totally unload, and that's definitely not good for you. ISU 152s, if they have the big gun, ooh, you definitely don't want to get seen by that, because if he touches you, it's all over for the most part. So what it comes down to is, honestly, that list for this particular tank, so many are the ones that you want to watch out for. Now, ones that you can really kind of bully, yeah, I wouldn't say that you can really bully anything. So I would say, honestly, this tank is just not good for that. You just want to stay away, stay pretty far away. Now, so you'll see here something that I'm actually doing that's a little different compared to what I'm saying. I'm not staying away. I'm doing what I can to support my team and assist. So, for example, I'm on the higher ground. I'm doing what I can to view. I already know that I've viewed out here. Now, that's one thing that you can kind of be safe about, is I know that there's no enemies really out there, because, hell, if they were, I'd see them, because this thing's got great view range. So instead, I'm just keeping this guy spotted. What I'm doing is, this AT is making a mistake. I can't roll forward enough to get depression on him. But what I saw that he was doing is he was turning and trying to go up so that he can get a shot up into me. So by him doing that, I was actually exposing his side to my team. Now, why my team didn't take any shots into him when he was doing that, I'm not quite sure. But that's essentially what I was doing. Now, bearing in mind, that's the gist of what I got. And I took the hill. So, like, the hill is definitely a key thing if you can get it in this tank. Because the one thing that is kind of cool is this thing does have decent maneuverability. So it does allow you to be, again, a supportive tank. So here, I'm paying attention to my minimap. I'm watching what my team's doing. We were able to get rid of the AT-15. And, you know, now I'm like, all right, well, and the key thing to note here, if you don't know this, when you're on the hill, the key thing to bear in mind is proximity spots. So what ends up happening is, like, you'll see those two heavies are there. If either one came closer to me, they would actually proximity me. And then I would be spotted, even though they don't have any actual line of sight on me. So what I'm doing here is, I know that they have artillery. I know that they have a couple tank destroyers. I'm trying to see if I can spot any of them. Now, the trick here is I could not spot all the way out here. So I maneuvered now that I know that there shouldn't be anyone on this other side unless they're hiding behind rocks where I can't see them, or hiding behind buildings where I can't see them. But that also means they could not possibly see me. So you'll see here, all right, I was able to spot from there. So now we got this dude spotted. All right, and I'm calling it out to my team, just letting them know, like, hey, look, I did spot. I also know that chances are he's not alone over there. There's probably somebody else. But again, distance is kind of like the key thing here. Now I wanted to try to help my team because I see that they're suffering with the OI. And again, here's the Progetto, and here's the OI, and here's Progetto, and then there's a Jackson. So you'll see that I took shots from all of them. Now, that said, I'm looking and I see that they fired 8 APCRs because they're little, you know, what you ever want to call it. They don't need it, though. None of them needed the APCRs. Now, one thing to note, though, is by them running the APCR, what does happen is it does help with sniping, because the shot will actually go faster, which means it gets to the target quicker. So if people are trying to maneuver and things like that, you can actually stop, or not stop, but it helps get that shot into them. But it doesn't make it any more accurate or anything like that. So you still got to run off the RNG and things like that. And the other part of that you get a benefit to, obviously, is that you have higher penetration. But like I said, they don't need the higher penetration to penetrate this tank. So again, key things to this tank, what I would highly recommend to do is try to be supportive to your team. Pay attention to where your team's going. You have the maneuverability and capability to maneuver around. Also, pay attention on the map where your team might not have any vision. If you notice that your team is lacking vision in particular places, it's probably, even though, I mean, you're not going to be pulling in a lot of damage and stuff like that, it really would benefit you. So like right here, you'll see as soon as my binocs kicked on, I immediately spotted that Progetto. And I knew that he's over here. And you'll notice that I'm playing kind of safe. I'm staying farther back. I'm kind of to the ridge of vision. I know I have some camo. And then I'm using the binocs to help me try to spot. And then as long as they come out, you know, like that, I'm going to spot them. And I can definitely spot better than they can, especially if I see that they're maneuvering. So bear that in mind. For some opponents, while they're maneuvering, as long as you're kind of on the ridge of your view range, chances are you can actually take a shot without getting spotted. But that's not to say that if anyone else was there, you wouldn't get spotted. So these were kind of key things where I was showing where that's the highlight of the tank, where it works really well. Now here's a matchup that's bad, right? So there's a Rue that's up there. Now the Rue's got great vision. It's a light. It's got a great gun. It's accurate. It's got speed. Now here I am. I'm trying to do everything I can to counter it. Now the truth is, even right now, the only way that I can spot him without him spotting me is if I don't fire. But my team is going to do really, or is not really matching up and shooting him whenever he gets spotted. So he's just rolling out, spotting us, and he's going to keep trying to do that as long as no one fires at him. So I need to try to keep him suppressed, essentially, which is why I'm kind of like, you know, backing up and doing what I can to fight him. Now, what you'll notice is my team is really, really trying to fight against this push, and we're not in a very good matchup. One, the tier 10 heavy that's with their push, he's got more armor than most of us can penetrate, so we're not really going to have a good time here. Now, you'll see this T-54 lightweight. Now, again, if you are playing and there is a group of people, it's probably really good to make sure that you kind of check where your teammates are. It's not good to be in front of somebody blocking line of sight. Always trying, like, if you can, I understand if you got to be in front of somebody, just try to get proper angles so that the person can shoot past you, hopefully. So in this case, you'll see, based on the tank design, I can't really sit there, level out, you know, to block out this T-54 lightweight to make sure that I can, you know, shoot across here. So I have to get into where I have a proper angle, and this is why. So you'll see right there, bam, I was able to block his shot. Now, did I really block? No, I bounced it. It actually deflected off of me. So that is making sure to use proper angling. Now here again, to the same strength, I am not a brawling tank. This is not a brawling tank at all. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, we're actually going to lose. We're going to lose that flank. they're going to push, and there's no way to really stop that tank. The ones that we have up there, we're not really going to be able to penetrate it. So what we can do is try to do a kind of like distance game. Make them have to earn every inch that they're coming across. And by the way, so one of the things I found out is this thing can't really go over those rocks at all. So yeah, that's one thing to note. So you'll see here, I'm making a choice. I'm getting distance, and I'm like, well, I want to try to support where I can. So I'm trying to see if I can get some shots. And I see, okay, hey, there is potential right there. Put a shot out because, again, that's a Pershing, so he's the same deal as me. And you'll see, like, certain things are red, but a lot of it will show up as green. And basically, the red part is only the mantlet. If they hit directly into the mantlet, absolutely, it'll work that way. So you'll see right here, I made a poor judgment, again, because the Pershing has great vision. So even though I'm like, yeah, he shouldn't really be able to see me, he could. So I fired, but then again, hey, gotta get the hell out of there. I'm trying to call out to my team here. That's the other thing too, is you kind of play this tank a little more supportive and aware. So I'm telling the team like, hey, artillery, why are you still here, man? Can you move? Like, I would have moved probably a lot sooner than now, because now they're all going to be in range to see them, which is what's happening. They're getting spotted and they're getting killed. But you'll see, I maneuvered around. I'm paying attention to where the enemies are, and I'm like, all right, well, there's that lightweight. He's definitely not going to be able to hold up against the heavy. And even then, like, to be honest, the heavy, I'm not going to be able to pen that heavy. So you'll see, I have nothing. Even if I swap to premium, which I do try, is I swap to premium, because I'm like, all right, what's the penetration? Like, you'll see I was even checking, what's the penetration? And it's like, you know what, 210, 220, it's not that great, man. I don't know. Maybe if I had the other gun that has higher penetration, maybe, right? You'll see, like, look, all of that is like blah. All right, now the Pershing, on the other hand, absolutely, I should be able to pen him, no problem. So you'll see, yep, here's all that green. Of course, put the shot out, bam. And then, like I said, APCR, so you saw that round basically traveled instantly. And bam, automatically hit him. So that's one thing to note. That's kind of cool if you're having a hard time with travel distance. You'll see here, I'm just like, man, anything. Come on. Oh, hey, something flashed green, right? But you'll see, it's hard as hell to pick out anything on that thing that's going to be green. And already my team's just fully broken down. So here, all I'm doing is playing to the strength of the tank and doing what I can to just pull in as much experience. That's really all you can do in bad matchups with this tank, mainly because it's kind of a mediocre performing tank, so it's really what you're gonna get stuck to. So again, not everything you can win, but hey, that's kind of the gist of the tank. I hope this helps. Leave a like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Catch you next time.